Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of TAMCO Product Premiere. My name's Anthony Moorhead, the Sales Director here at TAMCO. And once again, I'm joined by Kyler Moorhead, the Product Manager of RPP and MCG. So Kyler, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, glad to be here.
So last episode you were on, we spoke about the different contactors within the MCG range. What are we here to talk about today?
Today we're going to go over our motor starter series within MCG.
Perfect. So let's kick the show off by talking about what a motor starter actually is.
Of course, well, a motor starter is really quite simple, right? It's the contactor that we talked about last time, just paired with an overload relay, and that overload relay really serves as a failsafe.
Okay, so what does that mean, Kyler?
So a failsafe, or in modern day application, would be something like a GFCI that we're familiar with, right? And a GFCI is basically there to say, if there is leakage or for some reason interruption from the circuit that I'm connected to, I'm going to shut power down to everything, right? And an overload relay does exactly that, but in an industrial application. So if that overload relay senses any overcurrent coming through the motor starter, it'll actually shut down power completely to the motor itself, which in turn protects that motor.
Perfect. So the contactor is going to control if the circuit's on or off, and then the overload relay is just going to protect the circuit.
Exactly. And overload relays, at least ours here, have dials on them too. So there is a range, an amperage range that they can be set at, and again, the contractor or the end user adjusts that accordingly to whatever that motor starter or motor calls for in terms of, FLA or amperage and things like that.
Okay, so now that we know how a motor starter works, could you talk us through what products you have in the range?
Yeah, currently in MCG we really carry and build two different types of motor starters. Here we have our ME4D series and here our MSP series.
Okay, so what's the difference between the two?
The differences are slight, but however, based on the customer's specific requirements, one may work better for what they need to do, right? So an ME4D basically presents a little bit more options. So because of the space and because of the enclosure material, you can add things like a door disconnect, maybe a reset button, things like that. Whereas the MSP series is more of a smaller, compact motor starter that's easy for plug and play for smaller amperage options, right? So the MSP really tops out at 40 amps, whereas the ME4D can go upwards of 440 amps.
Okay. So that sounds great, and just to make it simple for everyone watching, can we talk through how to build the different products?
Of course. So our motor starters actually follow the same simple and easy part number matrix that our contactors and overloads and everything that we went over in the last video have. So for example, again, we just run through a quick, simple and easy series of questions, and the result is a nice and easy part number from MCG.
Let's do it.
All right, awesome. Well, the first question I got to ask you is what enclosure material is required?
I'm going to go for poly.
Poly, awesome. Yep. And what is the inrush current?
30 amps.
30 amps. And what about your FLA, so full load amps?
I'm going to say 18.
Okay, and lastly, your coil voltage?
120 volt.
And one more thing, does the customer require any controls on the door of that motor starter?
No, they don't.
Okay, perfect. So your part number, following the questions that I just asked you, would be MSP 32/22, and that's again to make sure the overload has enough range for your FLA, followed by the coil voltage, which is 120. Now, if you did say, hey, I need a start and stop on that door, at the end there it will be -SS for start stop.
So does the ME4D unit work the same way?
Yes, so it follows the same exact part number matrix. The only difference is it starts out with a different series. So ME4D would be the beginning of that part number. Now, say that the customer needed an enclosed, let's say 22 amp, 480 volt motor starter with an FLA of 13 amps, right? Their part number, again, just following that simple part number matrix that we just talked about, would be ME4D, the series name, followed by 22 for the amperage, /13 for the full load amps or FLA, and lastly the coil voltage 480. Now in the case that they need, again, a door configuration, that will be the last part of the part number. So again, if they needed to start stop, it would be -SS.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so now help me understand this. I'm with a customer and I'm trying to gather all the information to get a quote, but I don't know if I've got all the information. Can you help me there?
Yes, we can, and I'm actually glad you asked that question, right? So in MCG, we recently developed a nice form that basically runs either yourself at the branch or the customer through the questions that we need answered in order to build these motor starters. Now, Basically what this looks like is it's a quick and easy form, starts out with branch, email, and really all it is a way for us to contact you, the MCG team. Following that piece of information, we basically go through and ask the same questions that I just asked you, right? What's your amperage? What's your FLA? You know, do you need it in a metal, poly enclosure? All of those things. And the neat thing about it is all you have to do is hit submit, and from there, the MCG team automatically will send you an email with your quote, pricing, availability, done.
You make it sound very simple.
That's the intention, right? And the thing that we want to do here at MCG is make building these motor starters easy and simple for both you and your customer.
Okay, that sounds great. Okay, so Kyla, I know from talking to customers that there's constantly new staff joining the industry. And one thing that I hear a lot is that motor control is an intimidating market sector for them. And they might feel uncomfortable to have or start a lot of these conversations that we're talking about today. So how can the MCG team help facilitate that conversation?
Well, on the topic of that, right, the form that we just discussed is definitely a step in the right direction, right? But we still understand that there's a lot of different variations that go into these motor starters. Your customer may ask you something that you're not too familiar with. And if the form isn't enough, we're always glad, you know, as long as it's okay with the customer to reach out to the end user and talk to them one-on-one, right? And our staff is trained to do so and walk through a series of events. So, hey, this is the motor starter you need, great, but how do you need that to function, right? And through that conversation, we can make sure that number one, the customer orders exactly what they need, and number two, take that completely off your plate and just send you the part number and quote that you need to order for your customer.
Okay, so how do people get in contact with you, Kyla?
To get in contact with us, you can either email us at info@mcg-usa.com, or you can actually access our website. And I do want to add that the form that we discussed, it's available right on the front page of our MCG website, and that website is www.mcg-usa.com.
Awesome, that's great. Thank you very much for sharing this information with us today, Kyla.
Of course, hope to see you guys soon.